Hi friends, it's Amy from Ameroonie Designs, and today I'm here with another project tutorial. Today we are going to be making this super simple summer sling tote. It's perfect for kids. It's such a great size, easy to make, doesn't take a lot of fabric, and it's not so big that it's going to get really heavy for them to carry their own stuff as you're going on trips or amusement parks or just in and around your house and collecting rocks and all the things kids love to do in the summertime. So let's get started with our tote bag. The first thing you're going to need is 2 pieces of fabric for the lining of your bag and 2 pieces of fabric for the outside of your bag. Now you can see on my sample here that I have a different fabric for the flap than I do for the body of the bag. And in order to achieve that effect, what you will do is you will cut 1 piece of 1 print for the front and then a different fabric for the back. And then when it folds over, it creates this color block version. So basically, this becomes a reversible bag. You can just flip that over and then it looks totally different. One recommendation that I do have for this is if you are going to use a fabric with the direction, like this scale print is, you want to make sure if this is going to be your flap that it's upside down when you sew it together so that the flap folded over will have the fabric going the right direction. Otherwise, it doesn't matter which direction you have it. So it's easiest and least complicated to use a non-directional fabric for the outside of your bag, but you can totally, both of these fabrics that I have chosen for this one are directional and it will be just fine. You just have to pay attention to the directions that they're going. So once you have your external fabric and your internal fabric, and they are both going to measure 8 inches wide by 13 inches long, the next thing that you're going to need is a little accent strip. You'll need 2 of those for both of your front pieces, and these will be cut at 3.5 by 8 inches. The final piece of fabric you'll need is 1 long strip for your strap, and this is 3 inches wide by 36 inches long. Now, if you are using fat quarters for your fabric, you can just cut 2 pieces, 18 inches by 3 inches, and then sew the 2 of them together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then your strap will be plenty long. It doesn't have to be exactly 36 inches. It's just sort of a nice number for, you know, kind of a kid age. If you're making it for a toddler, you may want to make your strap shorter, but if you don't know who it's going to be for, if the strap ends up being too long, you can simply tie a little knot in it to shorten it, and then it works just great too. Once we have all of our fabric pieces cut, we're ready to start assembling our pouch. The first thing that you're going to do is take your 2 exterior pieces and you are going to measure 3 inches up from the bottom, and you're going to place your accent fabric strips, and these are our 3.5 inch by 8 inch strips. If your accent strip is directional, you want the top of your directional fabric to be at your 3 inch mark. So basically you'll pin it upside down so that when you fold it over, it's right side up. Now this one with the whales does not have a direction to it. So I will measure up 3 inches and then I will pin my accent strip in place. Now again, this is really where you want to make sure you're paying attention to your directional fabric. You know which one is going to be your front, which one you kind of envision being the flap folding over. So I am doing this one upside down, my scale print upside down, so that when this folds over as the flap, my scales will be going the way I want them to. So here I have it measured up 3 inches, and then I'm just going to put a couple of pins in place here. And then you will repeat that for the other side of your fabric. Then you're going to take it to your sewing machine and sew along this bottom edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let me swap out that sample. So you can see here that I have sewn across the bottom of that accent fabric using my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I will take this to my iron and press it down, and then you will sew across the top of your accent strip using an edge stitch there. And I do like to lengthen my stitch length a little bit just for a nice top stitch look, but you certainly do not have to do that. So you'll press it and then stitch it on both sides of your bag. And then the next thing that you will do is you will take your strap fabric that is 3 inches wide. You are going to begin by folding it in half along the entire length of your strip. You'll open that back up, and then you will bring these 2 sides into where that crease is from your first press. Press that well, again, going the whole length. And then you will refold your first original fold and press one last time. Now you'll notice that you have the 2 raw edges of the long side of your strip folded into the middle here. And then you'll take that to your sewing machine and you will top stitch along both edges to get a nice finished strap. Once you have your strap sewn and both of your accent pieces stitched down, we're ready to start putting our pieces together. The first thing that you will do to do this part is we're going to take one piece of our exterior of our pouch and we are going to measure down 4 inches and we're going to pin our strap into place. Now I like to have, there is a double side of your strap and a single side of your strap. I like to have the single side pointing up, but it's really just a matter of preference. There's no right or wrong. So I've measured down 4 inches and lined up the top of my strap there, and then I'm going to put a couple of pins in there to try to hold it straight and in place across. Then you want to make sure, that pin went in a little wonky, that your strap does not get twisted at all. So I just kind of run my hands along it, then I come over to this other side, measure my 4 inches down, and pin my strap into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my strap up and towards the center of this exterior piece here to try to keep it out of the way. Then I'm going to take my second exterior piece and I'm going to put it right sides together with the one that I have just attached my strap to. Now the first thing that I will do is I will try to line up the top seams of my accent strip because that's going to be the most noticeable place to line these up and the most noticeable when it's not right on the other side if they don't exactly line up. And then I will just put a couple of pins there. And then I will put a pin in the bottom and then I will pin up the side. Now, because you have the bulk of this strap here, it's going to make your exterior go just a little bit funny on there. And so you just want to follow it up with your fingers, straightening it out, and then it will line up as you get to the top once you've compensated for the bulk of that strap in the center. So you'll pin those 2 together. You'll repeat the same thing with your lining fabric. And then you're going to take it to your sewing machine and use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the top here. So around the bottom, up again, and backstitch at the top. I also like to backstitch at both sides of my strap here, just to reinforce it. You know, kids carry rocks and things that are heavy, so I like to make sure that it's really reinforced and that strap's gonna hold whatever it is they decide to throw in this bag. And again, you're gonna sew around all of the sides on both your exterior and your lining. So here I have a lining that's already sewn. Now the only difference when you're sewing your lining is you'll start at the top, work your way down, and then here at the bottom, you're going to leave an opening for turning. So you can see that I have this where I haven't stitched. You want to back stitch at both sides of your opening. So you'll come down from the top, turn the corner, back stitch, leave an opening, back stitch, and then finish your way up. Then you're going to clip the corners on both your exterior and your interior pieces. And then you are going to turn your exterior of your bag right side out. You'll want to make sure that the edges are pressed and the seams are lined up nicely. So I will often take this to my ironing board And then I will use the seam allowance and kind of push it to make sure that this seam is nice and straight and that I have it even and flush all the way around. So you'll have your exterior right side out, and then you'll have your interior wrong side out. And now we are going to slide the interior or the exterior of our bag inside the lining of our bag. So I'm going to open up the top, slide this bag in all the way to the bottom. And then the other thing that I will do is take my strap and I will feed it down and out through that bottom opening to keep my strap well out of the way. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my seam allowances here up at the top. So you can see I have my exterior seam allowances heading one direction. So I will push the lining seam allowance the opposite direction to get those two seams to nest. And then I will put a pin in that side. And then I'm going to turn it over and repeat the same for this other side. So I will have my interior, you can see here, this is the side I have pinned. My exterior fabric here is going to the right, so I'm going to again have it go to the right and then push my lining in the opposite direction and line up those edges and pin right there at that seam allowance so they're nesting. And then I will go and put a couple more pins lining up my top all the way around. And then you're going to take this to your sewing machine and sew around the top using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If your machine has a removable pocket in the front or a little, you know, mine has a little compartment, I guess I should say, in the front that I can pull off. I will often do that to reduce the circumference here and then just slide this over the arm of my sewing machine. But if not, then you'll just line it up and make sure that you're kind of pushing this bottom edge out of the way and then just carefully sew around it, making sure that you're not catching the opposite side as you sew around this top. Once you're finished, it's going to look like this. You can see that's sewn there with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. So what I will do is pull it right side out through the opening in the lining of my bag and pull it all the way up. Use a turning tool, get your corners nice and pushed out. And then you're going to take this to your ironing board. And again, you want to press these seams out so they're nice and flat. And when you get to this opening in the bottom, you want to make sure that it's pressed and lined up neatly there. Once you have it pressed and nice and flat, then you will take this to your sewing machine and just run an edge stitch across the bottom of that lining to close up that hole. And then you're going to push the lining into the exterior of the bag. And I just grab it from the top, use my hand, and just start pushing it in. And I like to keep a hand up here at this top seam so that it doesn't get pulled too far inside. It's gonna get a little chaotic, but not too terribly bad. And then you'll just work to nest your seam allowances on the sides here, get your top seam nice and flat, get your seam allowances nice and even, press it really well, and then just run a top stitch around that top opening of your bag. And once you're finished, you're going to end up with this cute little simple tote bag. Now on my blog, which I will link in the description below, there are options showing how to add a tassel here. You can add a large button on this front flap, which kind of gives it some weight and helps it stay closed. Or you can add 2 buttons and a little bit of elastic if you want a more secure closure there. But either way, it's super fun, super simple. And I hope you've enjoyed sewing this summer sling bag. If you have enjoyed it, I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment below and let me know what fabrics you're going to use to sew up your summer sling tote. And until I see you again, happy sewing, my friends.